if you can be as fit as possible, that's like 90%, and then there's probably 10% in skills, maybe familiarity with the different bike, just being comfortable, and maybe like a bit in preparation.
Welcome to the Alt Route Cycling Podcast, dedicated to covering the exciting and challenging off-road and alternate events that is growing enormously in popularity around the world. Join us as we delve into the alternate calendar of gravel racing, mountain bike racing, ultra-endurance events, and other mixed cycling races. I'm your host, Nick Locandro, and the podcast is brought to you by Trivelo Coaching, a coaching service to help you train smarter and race faster, including for any of your alternate cycling events. I hope you enjoy this episode and keep joining us as we explore the road less travelled. In today's first episode, we are joined by Trekky Johnston, a 5-time Australian mountain bike champion, ridden Cape Epic, winner of the Melbourne to Warrnambool, National Road Series overall winner, third of the men's elite road race, top 10 on the general classification of Tour Down Under, national gravel champion, and one of 35 selected in this year's Lifetime Grand Prix series in America. Member of the giant off-road team, Trekky Johnston. Welcome, and thanks for being the first guest on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. It's I was excited when you sent me the message to jump on for episode 1. I actually listened to a lot of podcasts myself, so I felt like in this time I've been writing a lot more, so I'm listening to podcasts flat out, and I just like to I have a very broad range, and it's cool to kind of get into it and be involved in a couple is exciting for me.
I saw you've been listening to the Howie Games on some of your monster rides. So hopefully, maybe in a few years' time, we might progress and hopefully have a podcast as good as that. Before we get stuck into some of the serious stuff, mate, I just briefly want to touch on how you got into cycling. You grew up on the south coast of New South Wales in Maria, which is a beautiful part of the world. I briefly lived in Browley, 10 minutes up the road. And I was talking to Angus, the owner of the local bike stop there at Maria, and he was talking about the local handicaps that your dad used to be involved in. Is that where cycling started for you?
Yeah, pretty well. My sister and my dad were doing the kind of the road stuff, just local club, like pretty low key, but it kind of draws you in, I think, and the social aspect of cycling. You do the local handicap. There may only be 25 or 30 people there, but you kind of make friends with those people and go for a coffee afterwards, and then you get sucked into the scene, and then it started with those kind of low key road events and some like kind of country handicaps, and then pretty soon after that just got into like some cross country mountain biking, and it went from there. Mostly onto the mountain bike for the next quite a while. Kind of thought that was my jam. I liked the aspect of skill, but also like endurance as well. And I think it's like perfect at that time, right? That's why so many young people get into mountain biking, because they want to do a sport. Maybe they play soccer or tennis or something, which is like the fitness element, or they swim or run. But they want to always muck around on their bike, right? That's what you do. So for me, it was like, that was what I was already doing. I was already playing around in the bush on my bike, and then I liked the fitness sort of endurance element of it as well.
So how old were you when you started just mucking around doing the local handicaps, and then when did you kind of move or transition across to more mountain bike based?
I think I started that sort of local road racing maybe 11 or 12, like pretty young. As in, it was hard to find a bike, like a good road bike that would fit someone so young, like so small. So that was kind of the age, I guess. And then it wasn't so long after that, maybe a year or two. I feel like that time in your life is like, a year seems like forever, but looking back, it was probably only a year before I started mountain biking more. And like I say, like I already had a mountain bike and I was just sort of mucking around on it, and then I got kind of semi fit from the road riding, and thought this is probably a good combo to go and do a mountain bike race.
And so talk to us a bit about that transition into mountain bike. Obviously, it's something you really enjoyed. Did you kind of progress to doing a lot of local races around the area? And when did it kind of turn a bit more serious for you?
Yeah, we would travel to like Canberra because that was the biggest mountain bike club probably in the country, to be honest. So it was really good racing. Like the club racing there was always really good. And also Nowra up the road, which is a bit smaller, but also yeah, quite busy on the racing. So we did that for quite a while, and yeah, I guess just doing that kind of progression through the club scene, and then yeah, some national level kind of cross country, and probably around 16, 17 was like where I thought, this is probably more serious, and started doing some like World Cup sort of stuff, and yeah, kind of got more serious about it. And I think I thought that was what I was probably going to do. Didn't really kind of put much energy anywhere else. Like I'd take time off school to go training and stuff, which was pretty out of character especially for that part of the world. I would say it's not like cycling. It's not a big cycling community. It's sort of like more footy or whatever. And here I am, just like taking days off to go ride my bike and stuff. So, but I enjoyed it, and at the time that was that sort of cross country mountain biking was what I thought I was going to do forever. So.
You mentioned that you'd done a few World Cup races. I want to fast forward to 2009 when you were 17, 18. You were diagnosed with testicular cancer, and this also coincided in the same year that Stromlo had the UCI Mountain Bike World Championships. So not only is it a home World Championship for you in Australia, but it's also kind of a home court advantage being at Stromlo, which was only a couple of hours up the road from you. It's a chance to line up on the front row, which I've heard you talk about for being such a huge advantage in mountain bike racing. And this is kind of at a point in your cycling career where a result could kind of really propel your cycling to the next level. And it's something obviously you'd spoke about. That's something that you wanted to do, and you'd won't say miss school, but went out during that time to do cycling specific sessions. So it's something you obviously put a lot of eggs into that basket. Can you tell us a bit more about this time in your life and how that event shaped not only your life, but your cycling as well?
Yeah. I think, you've sort of summed it up pretty well. Like it was a good opportunity to, especially having done a bit of stuff overseas, like cross-country mountain biking at the world level. It's very challenging, especially in Europe. And then you get to do races like North America and stuff where it's not as bad, as in there's not as many people, the fields aren't as big, and there's a bit less depth, but obviously still a lot. And then you have a place like Australia where that is kind of even more so. Like there's less people don't travel as much, and like it's a good opportunity to get a result and have a good ride. So I mean, I was kind of one of the best in the juniors, in the national team at the time. So I was probably going to be starting in a good position. And I guess like, a few weeks beforehand, got diagnosed, and kind of a bit was happening before that, but I wasn't so concerned. And then once I got that like kind of firm diagnosis, it was it flipped my kind of 17-year-old life on its head, and big changes from there, to be honest. It's crazy because at the time you're like, well, that mountain biking and that kind of being on the national team and world championships, that was all I was thinking about. That was all I thought that there was to think about. Like there wasn't much else kind of on my mind at that time. And then to have that kind of happen, it's like, pretty intimidating. It's probably the wrong word, but like, like it's a big thing to kind of accept at that age, to know that your life as you knew it and all you kind of thought about was tipped on its head. And I think say it happened now, it's like you're a bit more, I mean, obviously never that good, but you're a bit more kind of experienced in life, and you know that you know that things around the corner that you may not expect or be ready for. But yeah, when you're that young, it's sort of like, yeah, you're just not ready for those sort of things.
And I mean, has it given you a fair bit of perspective moving on past that event, when things don't quite go your way in cycling or life? That given you've kind of gone through that, I guess it makes something like cycling seem pretty minimal. Do you think that's helped in a positive way, knowing that if you don't have a good result, it's kind of not the end of the world and you can move on, knowing that you've been through things that are a bit more significant?
Yeah, for sure. I think sometimes I have to kind of dig back to that time and remind myself of kind of what I went through. I mean, it was actually so terrible. Like the chemotherapy and the surgeries and stuff. It's as bad as what they say it is. And in fact, I would say worse. So to kind of have that in the bank as to draw on the occasions when things aren't so good. It's I think it's of definite value. And I think just probably a life thing as well. Like having to deal with something so kind of difficult at that age, like I was saying, that you're not ready for and have to adapt, and even socially, like that was probably like 18 years old, 19 years old. It's a pretty fun time to kind of be alive and well, and I had to kind of just neglect a lot of that kind of fun time, and because I was so unwell, and it was tough to kind of deal with, I think. So I think in life I kind of took that lesson with me, and it was important part of who I am now, I think.
So post 2009, you mentioned obviously being 17, 18, and you missed out on kind of those crucial social part of your life. I think you stepped away from cycling for a few years. Was that to kind of enjoy that social aspect and move away from cycling a bit? Like what was the rationale here? Why did you step away at this point, and how long for, and what made you come back to cycling?
Yeah, I think to be honest, the first kind of year after I finished, the treatment and stuff itself took about 12 months or a bit more, actually. And then in that year after, I just like it took so long to just, I don't know, feel healthy again. I felt like that had done a lot of damage to my body, and I just wasn't ready to. I kind of tried, I guess, to. I initially probably was quite keen to start riding and racing again, but in those first kind of few sort of weeks of trying to do it again, I just wasn't healthy enough. So I just kind of took a pretty casual approach, and I actually I think I took maybe 6 to 12 months just kind of hanging out and doing some trips, and I guess catching up on a bit of that sort of early 20s kind of life, and just enjoying it. But for sure I wanted to come back, but in that time I was sort of away. I got started an apprenticeship, which I just kind of fell into a bit, and it seemed like a good thing to do, considering like I've spoken about before, like having before that, the experience with the health dramas. I wasn't so concerned about having a career that you needed to be fully healthy and 100% well for. I just thought that was what everyone had, and I guess having it taken away from you, your health, it's a pretty good kind of reminder that maybe you need to have some kind of backup for a career or whatever. I'm not saying I was going to be earning tons of money from cycling, but I just kind of realized that I needed to kind of settle down and get a qualification or a job that didn't require me to be like operating at full health if something was to happen again. So I did an apprenticeship as an electrician, which just naturally kind of slowed my ability to come back racing, just with the workload of doing that and trying to kind of just live out of home in Canberra, apprentice wage and stuff, just working a fair bit, and it was just a bit of a slow kind of get back to it. And like I say, after that initial period where I wasn't like able to do too much, I wasn't in such a rush. But yeah, definitely found my feet again in the later kind of years of my apprenticeship, I would say. And had a really supportive kind of environment where I was able to train enough and start to get racing again. And to be honest, I felt like it was a completely different sport from when I was doing it, in 2000, mid 2000s kind of thing. Just because the racing had kind of changed a bit, and there was and people started doing different things. Like it wasn't just cross country mountain biking. It was like, oh, maybe you'll do some road racing, maybe you do some marathons. There was a big marathon series on at the time, and it just changed a lot. So it was kind of like starting again, to be honest. Obviously, I had the skills that I'd kind of developed as a junior, and then but it felt like I was kind of starting again, which was not so bad.
So you've mentioned kind of coming back into cycling, riders are kind of starting to do multidiscipline that looks a little bit different. From that time to now, you've been 5-time Australian mountain bike champion. You've ridden Cape Epic, you won Melbourne to Warrnambool on the road, National Road Series overall win, third overall at the National Road Championships, top 10 GC Tour Down Under, National Gravel Champion. And now this year you've been one of 35 riders selected for the Grand Prix series in America, which is a 7-race series, 250,000, I think, American up for grabs for the overall win, like based off a points tally, which in itself is a pretty big achievement to get accepted into this. You're going to be racing the likes of ex-World Tour riders like Lockie Morton, Alex Howes, Kyle Reinen, Peter Stettner, and then some amazing American gravel pros like Adam Roberge, Dylan Johnston, Alex Vermeulen, Keegan Swenson, who won 5 out of the 6 races last year. Tell us a bit more about the series application process. When did you hear about it? What made you apply, and what your goals are for it?
Yeah, it's exciting, this series. And when I actually applied the year before as well, in the first year that they had it, and didn't hear back or anything. My application probably wasn't so good, but I think on that, the application itself is quite involved, and it's not just a list of your results and who you are like as an athlete. It's more of a broader, how will you grow USA cycling basically through this. And maybe I honestly don't know so much about how they come up with all that and what the kind of reasoning is, like what's their involvement with USA cycling or any of that. But I do kind of know that what they're about is taking this sport and making it bigger and better, and that's what the Americans do really well with any sport or with anything really. So I was just excited to apply and put my hat in the ring kind of thing, and I saw the races and obviously followed it last year, and saw the races that they were doing, and I just kind of was thinking, like, I feel like this is literally made for me. Like this is what I do. Like this is my type of racing, and it's riders from the world tour that are probably so strong. But then it's guys like Keegan who are like from the mountain bike, and has those skills and like obviously strength as well in spades, but and this kind of theory is probably out the window a little bit with him, but like maybe on the long days, the really long days, like Unbound, etc. Guys like from the world tour coming from the road, maybe they're like that's their day. But then there's days which are totally the opposite, like maybe 2.5 hours mountain bike race, which is going to be Keegan's day. Like it's it's just so like each end, and where I think I sit just right in the middle there. Like I'm not pushing the limits on the descents, but I can keep up with most. And I'm not the VO2 climber, but I can grind all day with pretty much the best. So I just felt like that was that type of racing is just going to be in my honey hole. And yeah, I was excited to get the application in, and I felt like it was a good application. And then to hear back that I was accepted was yeah, really really cool. And in terms of like my goal for it, I don't know. I feel like as I'm kind of doing my homework and trying to be prepared as not only like physically for the racing, I think that's possibly for me what I find least daunting is being fit and ready to race. It's more so like the logistics within the racing, like the what to carry, your how much to eat and drink, and how much of those kind of things are you carrying around all day, and there's huge disadvantages to if you're getting that stuff wrong. Like maybe you run out of fuel, or maybe you don't you're carrying too much, and it's like you hit the big climb. So I feel like the locals, like locals or the American guys that know the events quite well, are probably going to just have that upper hand in that aspect of things. But like I say, I think my kind of ability and strength is probably going to be just consistency throughout each extreme of event. So Unbound being the longest kind of road style race, and then obviously like there's a race Schwammergen, which is like 40 miles, pretty mountain bikey I think, and I think I'm just going to aim to be kind of consistent throughout the 7 races. And I think that's where my strength is going to be.
There's a fair bit I want to unpack there, and I'm glad there's some things that you touched on that I really wanted to deep dive with. I'll start off with a bit more about your training, and you mentioned it's something that you're not too stressed about. I know, I guess everyone in Australia knows how hard of a trainer you are, but I guess in the past, how have you managed being able to manage to train across multidiscipline, so road, mountain bike, and gravel, having a full-time job and a young family?
It's hard. Like I think I don't know. I think I always come back to like being fit. So I guess my priority, speaking generally, is just to be fit, as fit as I can, because you might, say if I jump into a cross country race, like a cross country mountain bike, and I haven't touched the mountain bike so much, and my skills are a bit so, or even like a marathon for that matter. It's a small disadvantage, and I think it's probably it's somewhat lack of preparation, but you never really lose the race on that. I think just having done it for so long, like I get rusty for sure, but it's not so bad. So I just come back to how can I fit the most in that's going to get me the fittest, and my fitness will be, in the ballpark on the day. And I think, like now it's a bit different. I've stopped working, and it's actually so good. But and then obviously in the last 2 years, having Maeve, our 2.5-year-old daughter, is an extra challenge as well. But like I say, I think I just always went. But if there was a bunch ride, which there is here a few days a week, and I can get something out of that, then I'd go and get that done before work or whatever, and because I knew it was going to be a good session, and maybe only 2 hours or 2.5 hours, but it's like real quality, and it doesn't mean I won't get to work on time. It doesn't mean obviously I could always do more at home, but it's like not such an impact on everything else. But I think for multidiscipline, I feel like if you can be as fit as possible, that's like 90%, and then there's probably 10% in skills, maybe familiarity with the different bike, just being comfortable, and maybe like a bit in preparation, like your setup and stuff, like what you're kind of carrying with you, and maybe you're using a pack, or and just being familiar with that sort of stuff, and not being so daunted on race day when you have to kind of change it up, and maybe you're jumping on a different bike, like your gravel bike or road bike or whatever your kind of main tool is. But I think fitness is like most of the picture, and then the rest you're just kind of feeling where you can.
It's great insight. I mean, for me, doing Otway Odyssey, for example, which you raced recently as well, it's something that I see you race on, for the first climb anyway, until we hit the single trail section. But, it looks like it's something that you're always so comfortable with. For me, it's, I guess, somewhat of a positive to know that, you might go into race and you are a bit rusty. Obviously, it's something that you get back pretty quickly, but things aren't always perfect for you, I guess. The other thing I want to touch on is most of these events have a reasonable endurance component to it. The shortest will be, I think you mentioned before, Schwamigan mountain bike is around 2 hours, Sea Otter's around 3, but this goes up to 10 to 11 hours for Unbound. Now, all of their races have so many different components, whether it's VO2 climbs in some of the mountain bike races, or even Unbound has some really short sections like Texaco Hill. And then you have Leaderville, which is longer threshold efforts at altitude. How do you manage being such a well-rounded cyclist and navigate your training around this so that you can be effective on all courses?
It's a good question. And I don't know, I guess in Oz, it's like not such a concern, like specific events. Like generally, I don't know, I feel like I'm, other than like Buninyong, I don't really do too much specifically for one race. But with the kind of time investment and the dollar investment I'm making in this series, it's like I really need to make some decisions in training around these particular races and how I can be best prepared for each of them. So, I would say in the past, there's probably only a couple of events a year that I would really target in training specifically. The rest of the time, I'm kind of just trying to be fit and maybe ramp up here and there, but nothing so specific. But I think I look at the whole series obviously, but when I think of the lifetime series, for some reason I just think of Unbound and Leadville as kind of, probably because they're the biggest, but also they're definitely the most challenging, I would say, not having done the others. There's definitely some other hard races. I think like some of them have really, really steep climbing and heaps of climbing totals, but I just think for like length, like duration and difficulty, like Unbound and Leadville are the ones that kind of stick out in my mind. And I think Unbound, I feel like not having like done super research on the course or anything, but kind of having a rough idea of what's required. It's like sort of not easy to train for, but I just think I can do some just huge days and fit some kind of ramps in towards the end. Yeah, and I think Unbound, it's obviously not physically easy to train for, but I think I just know that that 10-hour mark is kind of where I need to be aiming for, and if I can do some rides like that and fit some ramps in towards the end of the day, that's kind of going to cover that off. And the good thing about that is, doing that kind of training is not going to like cost you anything for the other events too. So Sea Otter being like 6 weeks before it, if I'm training hard for Unbound, like I'm going to get to Sea Otter in reasonable shape, I think, naturally. Leadville, on the other hand, I think with the altitude is going to be like the main kind of challenge for the year. Just not having done so much at altitude. Like I've done a bit, but obviously we don't have it here like they do there. So yeah, and I'm gonna you know, cover that off and do some altitude stuff when I'm over there, and just make sure I'm prepared enough for that. I think that's going to be a really challenging event. And just the research I've done, what I've kind of seen, it's like, yeah, that's a tough one, just at that altitude, and there's also a lot of climbing. So yes, in terms of specifics, that's the two that kind of stick out for me. And I'm trying to like have a bit more of a well-rounded view on the year, because to be peaking for 6-7 months is like probably not possible. But also I think I'm actually generally quite good at just maintaining a good level of fitness, and then kind of just doing that week or two here or there to ramp up before an event. So I guess that's my plan, but trying not to get too focused on every single race and trying to be on for every race.
Yeah, I know listening to Dylan Johnston, it's something that he spoke about in quite a bit of detail. It's such a long series. I mean, it starts in 6 weeks, and then the last race, I think, is in October. So to be up for that period of time is basically impossible. And I guess this is where tactics comes into the overall side of it as well, is that do you target a couple of races that you think is more leaning towards your strength, and you know that you're going to hit other races maybe not quite in form, or it's just a matter of pinpointing all the races and giving it being able to be near or close to your best for all of them?
Yeah, I think I want to have like I could have sort of chosen to stay home for Sea Otter, because that cuts out like 8 or 9 weeks. But I'm going to go for kick off with Belgian Waffle Ride, San Diego, and then do Sea Otter as the first of the Lifetime series, and then actually come home. But I chose to do that because I think being, maybe this is the only time I do the Lifetime series, and if I can have 7 solid events, or at least 7 chances at a solid event, then that's better than 6 for me. So I think, I'm not gonna try and I don't want to hit any of the races like not in decent shape. I don't really know what like Keegan, and he seems to be good all year, but I'm not sure whether that's just because he's really good or because he's able to juggle the training like that. But I think possibly similar to me, like does a massive summer, and then gets into the racing as it comes to March, April. So I think I'm going to have a pretty like overall kind of view on the races, and I just kind of like the idea of seven races, 7 events as part of a series. Like it's a lot of the racing I do and have done is not a series. Like I do like the World Cup or some World Cups or whatever, but I'm not part of the whole series. Back when I was doing that sort of thing, and also I'm not even in the running. Like it's just so far back. So to have to be up against only 35 other sort of races, it's like it just reminds me a bit of like the other sports I'm into, like that like F1 or supercars or whatever that has a series, and you're like you don't have to win every race. You have to, but if you're solid, like you're probably gonna be in the money by the end of the year. So it kind of excites me, that series element.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's a really cool concept. And I mean, here in Australia, we're not quite advanced in our gravel riding just yet. But I mean, hopefully, when we start to see some events pop up, like Dirty Warney, for example, there's Thunderbolts Adventure Ride, Pig and Whistle, just to name a few. I guess it would be pretty cool down the track if we get to a stage where we can start doing something similar. Now, I know you spoke about logistics being a challenge, and it's something I wanted to ask you about. There's 2 Australians in the series. Take out Lockie Morton because he's based in Colorado, but there's yourself and Tasman Nankervis, a few European races, but the majority of them are Americans. How are you managing this logistically? We spoke about it, 7 races from April through to October they're in different states, and often a lot of them have 4, 6, 8 weeks in between them. So how do you manage and juggle that?
Yeah, it's been one of the biggest challenges, I would say, is kind of, I guess initially when I applied, I was just like, oh, well, I'll apply and, work the rest out if I get in or whatever. But then I got in and it's like, well, I have to make some decisions here on how this is actually going to be done. And I just have, within me always this urge to do things, 100%. So if like I'm getting in, I'm like, okay, well, I'm doing every race. I'm not going to miss any of the races because I want my best, chance to make a shot at it. And I just had to kind of, beg and get sponsors and get people to help that I'm so lucky to have. And it's been kind of, initially it was quite fun, that process, and getting people on board and people to kind of buy into the journey, and well, not only buy in but come along and be part of it, because it's a crazy event that we're going to be taking on especially from Australia. So once I kind of got that support, and I like by the end of that kind of process, and I was trying to make the budget, and it was getting a bit kind of not tedious, but like, it was wearing me out a bit, because it's an easy sell compared to what I normally am selling, because there's definitely, this series has a lot of coverage and all that, but like it's also in America, so trying to sell that to Aussies is like a little bit harder as well. But look, I've got some really good support, and that's made being able to do it properly a lot easier. But it still doesn't take away the fact that there's kind of 7 or 8 months that I need to be in America for, and especially with the family and stuff as well. It's like it's quite a challenge. But what I'm finding is that I kind of plan my first trip, which is just going to be to Belgian Waffle Ride and the first round of the Lifetime Series, which is Sea Otter Classic in California. So I'm going to do the trip for that, and I kind of just planned that out, and then we kind of worked on a date that I'd go back, which will be just before Unbound, and then my plan is to kind of stay over there from then, and hopefully the family can come over for some months in between. But I mean, it's certainly had its challenges to plan it all out, and it's not finished yet, that's for sure. And even things like insurance and all that sort of stuff is really quite a challenge from Oz. And racing as a professional is more difficult again to get sufficient insurance coverage and all that sort of stuff. So it's been a challenge, but I mean, once I got invited to compete in this series, I certainly was all in. Like it's time to shoot my shot, I would say. So Lifetime Series it is.
I guess you kind of, at least here in Australia, kind of pioneering getting your own personal sponsors for this series in a way. I know you spoke about it's obviously something you've done before for your mountain biking. In America, we see a lot of these gravel pros that essentially this is their full-time job. They've got their own sponsors and seem to be earning pretty good money. I mean, he's a bit of a hot topic now, but Colin Strickland at the time knocked back a contract at EF essentially because the wicket he was on was so good as a pro gravel cyclist, getting to race his own races, have his own support, choose his own gear. Do you see that potentially in, 5-10 years time, something that's possible here in Australia, or do you think we'll just never kind of reach those kind of heights the way it is in America at the moment?
Yeah, I think probably in that timeline, you say 5 or 10 years, it's possible. I was chatting with someone the other day about the fall of kind of road cycling in Oz, and the way that gravel cycling can probably fill that up or take it over, or has it even caused it? And I don't think it's caused it. I just think it's it just has, it's like a lot more attractive for everyone, basically. You know, event organisers. I mean, I'd say Karen Jones probably wouldn't say running the Melbourne to Warrnambool is easy. The Dirty Warnie, sorry, is easy, but it's potentially easier than the road race. Maybe not. Maybe I should say not. But generally, gravel races are easier to put on. Not that I've put one on myself, but you can use roads that aren't so busy, and you don't need that level of kind of road closure or road safety that you may for the road racing. Also, you can have 500, 1,000, 1,500 other competitors compete in the same race. You can't have that at an NRS race. You also don't have teams in the NRS anymore that have budgets to pay enormous entry fees, which is what they need to be to have a good event, right? So you can have elite level racing at the front of your gravel series. You can also have 1,000 or 2,000 other people enjoying themselves and competing on the same course as the elite field, and you're getting heaps of entry fees from these people who are having a crack and having a challenge and enjoying themselves. So I think it's just so attractive for all parties, really. I don't know how we can probably mimic what's happening in the States. I'm certainly on board, and I think for my career, like, it's this year, I don't know, I just want to see how I go and see if I can be competitive with those guys in the US. And while they're like, some of them are gravel specialists, that like Keegan, he'd be one of the best riders in the world, for sure, on any surface. So I think it's just going to be interesting to see how I go against those guys. And it's great that Tasman as well got into this series, because it's two of us kind of coming from here to going there and bringing the stories back. And I mean, I'm so lucky that people have got on board with me. And I think it's it's a good story as well. Like, it's a good journey, and I think setting off to the States and racing these guys is going to be exciting for people to follow along with.
I think it's a really good example you bring up with the Dirty Warnie in comparison to the Melbourne to Warrnambool on the road, which Karen Jones does an amazing job at. If I look at the Melbourne to Warrnambool, which I did this year, I think it had maybe around 150 entrants, and I would say the bulk of that with the NRS teams. And then I think the Dirty Warnie had around 350 entrants, which I think is almost a really good representation of the way that it's going. And the part that I like about it is, like you said, is that you can have an elite race up the road where you might have 10, 15, 20, 30 people at a gravel race wanting to win it. But the great thing is that you can have a whole host of different age abilities that are just doing these rides, either because it's a new course and new roads and new sceneries, or just the ability to complete a course that might be 120 kilometres, or let's say crazy like America being 330 for Unbound. And I think that's something that really attracts the people. It's almost like before COVID hit, everyone kind of used a race as that kind of outlet for that real competitive itch, I suppose. And to me, and I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, is that once COVID hit and people kind of found gravel and getting to explore in these adventures, really filling people's cup, having this off-road adventure experience. Do you see that we'll move into the way of America and less road racing and kind of the more adventure, off-style, alternate style racing or cycling?
Yeah, I think so. Through the COVID time, it was a strange thing because, obviously for everyone, but to have no events to go to, it was like, what are we going to do? Like, maybe we go on an adventure. And it was probably until then that I didn't really see the need for my gravel bike. Like, I had one, but did I really need it? I don't think so. But then when I just decided to go on these adventures more. So it was like, wait, this is what this bike is for. Like, I can ride on the road, I can ride on the off road, I can do it all, and I can ride at 30, 35k an hour, like go quick. So you can do some good adventuring on this style of bike. And yeah, I think that was just kind of identified by myself and probably a lot of people through that time where there was no events. And yeah, the option was to just go and do your own little event, which may have been, a long kind of off-road multi-surface adventure, which there is so much of in Australia, especially. I feel like where I'm from, down on the south coast, like we didn't really have mountain bike trails, but we had fire trails for hundreds and hundreds of kilometers. And that's why when it came along, this gravel racing, I was like, wait, I've been doing this my whole life. Like this is what off-road riding kind of started for me. It was just on a mountain bike. But yeah, now for sure, I identify the gravel bike as its own thing and has its own purpose. And for now, there to be actual racing and like elite level professional racing. It's like I say, I feel like it's made for me.
We've touched on Keegan Swenson a little bit, and we said he won 5 out of 6 races in the Lifetime Series last year, and we're talking about against some incredible athletes, ex and current World Tour riders and all the gravel pros. He actually got selected for the American road team for Worlds at Wollongong, which I find pretty wild just based off his efforts in the Lifetime Series. Do you think potentially if gravel grows here in Australia, that people can look at this style of racing as an opportunity to get great exposure and get picked up, even if their aspirations are on the road, and using this format for that?
That's a good question. I think very unique that Keegan was selected and put into the world's team. I think from what even I saw, he was surprised himself a bit. But I think why not? Like he's so strong and so capable, knows how to race, a bike. So why not? But in Australia, I think it should be. I really think it should be. Simply because if you're going good in hard gravel racing, you're going to be going good on the road. Like it's not like some mountain bikers will struggle on the road, but if you can race a gravel race well, I feel like you're going to be good on the road. And also that there's going to be a lack of road racing for you to show yourself anyway. But I think high performance, in terms of national teams and that sort of caper, I think there's no way Oz Cycling are in any way interested in that kind of pathway. And unless completely different people come in and take those roles, I wouldn't see it changing ever, to be honest. Which is a shame because I think, like I say, there's probably going to be a lack of road events for young people to get that exposure. Like, I mean, even in the last 5 years, there's been a lack of events that have been, and they were getting shorter and shorter and shorter. The road races are getting shorter, the tours are getting shorter, the stages are getting easier. So I think, it's a shame. And I don't know, I guess you just have to go to Europe or race on the track to get find your way into that kind of part of it. But I think that's what's also so good about gravel racing and the Lifetime Series itself. It's like so disconnected from any of that kind of high performance road cycling, especially in Oz. I mean, it seems like in the US they're a bit more inclusive and there's opportunities like what Keegan got. But yeah, I really see the Lifetime Series as being so disconnected from kind of high performance road cycling in Oz, which I think is good, and I like that separation. And I think it's its own kind of thing, and I feel like I'm just taking on my own adventure and going and doing this series like off my own back kind of thing, which is literally what I'm doing. But I don't know whether that link will happen in Oz. I think there's too much ingrained.
Yeah, it's a really good point, and I think I almost agree with you in a way that it probably is a good thing if it is kept separate. And I think the great thing if it does develop here in Australia, like in America, is that people can do this and get their own or have their own, make their own financial support. So there's no reliance on anything else, which I think is a really good thing for the sport as well. Um, the last thing I want to talk about is gear and strategy, and we touched on it a little bit before, and it said it's something that was maybe a little bit of an unknown for you. But given gravel is kind of moving pretty rapidly with the tech, like Factor released an aero gravel bike this year. Guys like Dylan Johnston buried data and science driven using aero skin suits, socks, helmets. And then things like your nutrition, whether you carry camelbacks, carry extra water, run lean. There's kind of a hell of a lot to it, and you haven't probably done a whole lot of gravel racing, obviously none in America before. You're someone that comes across as really experienced and knowledgeable, and someone that's willing to kind of go to others to learn more. I know you put a team around you for nationals with Mitch Docker and Brent Lancaster and a whole host of other people to give yourself the best opportunity. What are you doing for America to help this, and have you reached out to others for any guidance and help?
Yeah, it's like you say, it's something I think when I go into something, I'm kind of all in, and I think definitely in the past I probably wasn't. Like my early kind of racing days, and even you think you kind of know it all, and you don't really need to be asking anyone because it's not uncool, but like I don't know, you think you're all over it. So, but as you get more mature, you can reach out for help, and that's in life as well. Having worked and been in kind of construction industry or whatever, it's like you just get better at asking for help basically, and you can identify who has more knowledge than you, and you go to them and you see if they're willing to part with it. And generally, like cycling is really good for that, and especially if you're a good person and you've been friendly and nice to those people in the past, then it's fine to go and have a chat and get some info. In terms of this racing and the preparation with the gear and stuff, it's certainly challenging. Knowing, like I find myself spending a lot of time on Instagram, like checking out the different bikes and like what tires they got, how big are they, trying to zoom in on the chain rings and see what chain rings they're running, and like I watch some of the racing and I'm like trying to work out when they pick up the camelback, when they drop it off, do they finish with one, do they start with one, do they take it on the climb, do they, all this stuff. So that's kind of the hardest part, I think. I'm lucky in the US. I've got support. There's kind of a team called the Giant Global Gravel Collective. So it's basically Giant Global is getting some riders from around the world and bringing them together to kind of be a collective. So with support from their own countries, like Giant in their own country, and then coming together with some staff and mechanics and that sort of thing. So I've been working with Carl Decker, who's been like Giant for his whole life, I think. Bit of an icon. He's really helpful. And we've got Cole Payton, who's in Giant as well for the Lifetime Series this year, which is really helpful. So I think between those guys and also guys like Keegan are really good at putting their stuff out there. I've kind of heard bits and pieces about how he's like kind of tries to throw the road guys a bit with his setups and all that sort of stuff, but I think he's pretty genuine most of the time with what he puts out, and you can see what he runs on his bike, and it's just for me a matter of kind of gathering all that information and doing what I can with it. Obviously trying to be really prepared before I go and try and test as much of this stuff at home and on my big rides if I can, with the fueling and stuff. I've got good help from Oru Case, which they do all the packs for my bike. And yeah, Kyle Kirby there, he's been really helpful. He's kind of knows a bit more about the scene, and just reaching out to people who, may know more than I do about what people use for the racing. It's cool. It's cool, that's for sure. Your road setup, you roll out with your 25 mil tires every day, and there's not much to it. You grab a bottle every so often, and that's it. But with this, there's so much more logistics, and I'm really, really keen to be as much across it as I can.
Yeah, and someone that's been around cycling for so long, I'm sure this challenge is probably really exciting for you, even though it's something that's taking up a lot of your time with research. I know, people like myself will be taking a really keen interest in how you go, and definitely be supporting you from here or down under, as the Americans say. We wish you all the best in this series, and thanks so much for running us through the application process, the events, how you're approaching it, and really looking forward to getting you back on the podcast to talk about some of these races after you've experienced it. So thanks heaps for your time, mate.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I hope this podcast kind of goes to new heights and informs people what they want to know about gravel racing and just general off-road kind of cycling and all the adventures that come with it. And I'm keen to share with everyone back here. That's even something I put in my application. I want to tell the Aussies about these adventures I'm going on in the US, and I want to I guess tell that story back home and try and get more people kind of into the scene and into off-road cycling.
Awesome, mate. Thank you, and all the best over in the States.
Thanks very much.